Deep within Stephen King's Maine, which is found just northeast of Lovecraft Country, a card game is played that can just save humanity, and maybe even the world, from an extraterrestrial threat that brings a very dangerous parasite that gives you short-term benefits before ripping up your intestines in a violent and bloody way. Only through matching cards and pegging one's score will this body horror apocalypse be averted. Greetings and welcome to Checkpoint Gaming. With this two-part series, we'll be going over Cribbage. With Cribbage, it was created in the early 17th century with its invention attributed to English poet John Suckling and is a descendant of Noddy. When it comes to scorekeeping, it is done on a cribbage board, which is typically rectangular in shape with a series of holes which can be numbered and presented in a track formation and divided into at least 2 separate tracks, although board design can vary in shape and size, along with some possessing additional tracks. Most boards also possess a storage slot for the pegs. Found at either end of the board or within its center are 3 additional holes, which are known as game holes, with each player placing their 2 pegs within them at the start of the game. The game's objective is to score at least 121 points, although some variants have the players aim for 61 points instead, with the scoring of the needed points counting as a match with a game consisting of multiple matches, with a third peg being used as the game peg to track how many games each player has won. When a player obtains the required number of points during the game, play immediately stops with said player being deemed the winner, and this can occur at any point during the game. With that said, it's possible for players to score more than the required number of points needed to win. To score points, it's done through the creation of card combinations, and once a player has scored points, they're to move their given peg the respective number of holes along the board. It is worth noting that the board is only used for score tracking purposes, with each hole representing 1 point, with their given peg being moved every time the player scores a point, regardless of source, the appropriate number of holes along their respective track. With the board's placement, it's typically done between the players. Although 2 is the standard number of players, more can play as well, something we'll talk about in the next episode. Besides the cribbage board and at least 2 pegs for each player, a standard 52-card deck is needed with the jokers removed. And if a peg is either missing or unable to be found, an item of a similar nature can be used instead. Regarding card ranking, it consists of the following, from highest to lowest: King, Queen, Jack, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and Ace. When it comes to that of card values, all face cards are worth 10 points, aces are worth 1 point, and all other cards are worth their printed numerical value. Before play begins, each player selects a set of colored pegs and places them on the board in their game holes, which can vary based upon board design. Their pegs will remain in the game holes until it comes time to score. From there, the deck is to be shuffled, followed by each player cutting it to determine who will be dealing first with each player, taking a minimum of 4 cards and 4 remaining in the deck after each player performs the cut. This cut also splits the deck into 3 parts, 1 for each player and the third remaining on the table. After the cut, the card found at the bottom of each player's cut represents their given card to be compared. Another means is to draw a card from the deck and place it face up on the table in front of the player. Either way, the person with the lowest card deals first. But if both cards possess the same value, it represents a draw with them engaging in a recut or redraw. Our research indicates that all 10 valued cards represent a draw. With that said, we feel like card ranks should take precedence, so the kings outrank all others, queens are next, and jacks rounding out the list with only the same face cards acting as a tie, but we'll leave that up to the players on how they wish to proceed. From there, dealing out each hand will alternate between the players. If there's more than 2 people playing, then responsibility for dealing travels in a clockwise direction. And if playing multiple games, the loser of the previous game deals first in the subsequent hand. Once they determine who the dealer is, they shuffle the deck with the non-dealer cutting it, leaving at least 4 cards in either end of the deck. To paraphrase an old saying, trust the dealer, but always cut the deck. And though the non-dealer can shuffle the cards, the dealer has the right to shuffle last before presenting the deck to the non-dealer to cut before dealing out the cards. Once cut, 6 cards are dealt to each player, face down, 1 at a time, starting with the non-dealer player. With the remaining cards, they're to be placed off to one side, face down. With that said, if a card is exposed during the dealing process or the deck is found to be imperfect, then a new deal is made with the same dealer. After dealing the cards, each player will look at their hand and discard 2, face down, into the crib, which is to be placed off to one side. And though it belongs to the dealer, they're not allowed to look at the crib until it comes time to score at the end of the hand, at which time the crib is revealed. And when scored, it's added to the dealer's score. But if one hand possesses the wrong number of cards after the crib has been established and the other hand and crib are correct, then a misdeal is declared and a redeal occurs. Once all of that has been completed, the non-dealer player will cut the remaining deck to determine what the starter card is going to be. This is done by them drawing the top card of the lower half of the deck, returning the top half of the deck back atop of the lower half, and placing the top card of the lower half of the deck face up atop of the deck. The non-dealer player isn't to show the bottom card of the deck they have in their hand during this process. This card also isn't used during play, only used during scoring of their hand and the crib, so it's just an additional card for scoring purposes and acts as a community card. A variant to this has the non-dealer cut the deck. The dealer draws the top card from the lower half of the deck. The non-dealer returns the cut portion of the deck atop of the lower half of the deck. The dealer turns the card they drew face up, then places it atop of the deck. Another means of determining the start card is to have the dealer just flip the top card of the deck. The starter card is also known as the cut card. If the starter card is a jack, then the dealer will immediately score 2 points, which is also known as nibs, and is scored before the dealer deals out a card. Otherwise, it's lost and can't be scored. A closely related concept is knobs, where a jack that is found in a player's hand or within the crib matches the suit of the starter card, thus scoring 1 point because of it. With the scoring of this point, it's done during the scoring phase after reaching the counting phase. From there, players will take turns playing their cards, one at a time, face up in front of them, starting with the non-dealer player. Players are also to keep their cards separated from their opponent's cards. But if playing with 3 or more players, this starts off with the player found to the dealer's left, with play moving in a clockwise direction. As players play their cards, they're to announce the running total as they play their cards. So if the non-dealer player's a 2, they say 2. From there, if the dealer plays an 8, they say 10. This continues until they reach 31. They have legal cards to play, and they are in possession of cards to play. With the value of 31 we just touched upon, it represents the running total, and the players can't play a card that will exceed this value. And if they can't play a card without exceeding this value, they say go instead of playing. From there, the next player will play a card if they're capable of doing so. If not, then they say go. When a player says go, they forfeit their turn for the remainder of the round. Once 31 has been reached, or all players have passed, the count will reset to 0 until all cards the players possess are able to be played. With the player that plays the last card in a sequence but doesn't reach 31, they're to score 1 point before they say go. But if they hit 31 exactly, they score 2 points instead. It's worth noting that a player can't score both the last card bonus and the exact 31 bonus simultaneously. Since it's either or, if a player scores the exact 31 bonus, they only score 2 points, not 3, ignoring the land card bonus. When starting the next turn, players can't lead with the cards that they used in the previous turn due to any part of the previous run not carrying over for the counting of the next run of 31. Because of this, they're required to start the new turn with any remaining cards they have in their hand. When players have cards remaining in their hand, play will continue for as many rounds as needed until all players have played all their cards. Once that occurs, all of the played cards are to be gathered up, combined with the undistributed deck, and shuffled by the new dealer before the next deal is to occur. With the player that still has cards found in their hand while their opponent doesn't, they simply continue playing and scoring combinations until they have played all their cards. Regarding combinations, if a player says go while combinations are still able to be formed, said combinations remain valid. But when both players can't play cards, causing a new round to occur, then all combinations will start anew. When it comes to scoring, which is known as pegging, it can be done by forming combinations, and they consist of the following. And it is worth noting that scoring can be compounded, allowing things such as pairs and runs to be scored together instead of separately. So the parts are to be scored either individually or in combination, but not both. It's either or. If the card value totals 15, the player who reached it will score 2 points. If a card is played that matches the previous card played, it constitutes as a pair, scoring the player 2 points. It is worth noting that despite the face cards being worth 10 points each, they can only be paired with a card that is of the same rank. So jacks can only be paired with jacks, queens with queens, kings with kings, lolcows with alogs, and Andrew Tate with a series of inmates. If a card is played that matches the previous 2 cards, making a 3-of-a-kind or triplet and known as a royal pair, the player will score 6 points. If a card is played that matches the previous 3 cards, thus making a 4-of-a-kind and known as a double pair royal, the player will score 12 points. With a run, also known as a sequence, it's when cards are played that create a sequence of 3 or more cards and are scored as follows. A run of 3 scores 3 points, a run of 4 scores 4 points, and a run of 5 scores 5 points. So each card in a run scores 1 point. For cards to count as a run, they have to be a consecutive sequence based on rank, not suit, and it can't be interrupted by unrelated cards. So a valid run is 9, 10, Jack, not 9, 10, Queen. With that said, runs don't have to be played in order as long as the run remains intact, with unrelated cards breaking the run. So a run consisting of something like 9, 6, 8, 7 counts, even though it wasn't played in order, while something like 8, 7, 7, 6 doesn't count, since the additional 7 is an unrelated card, breaking the run. And since aces are always low, they can't form a run with kings. With a flush, it consists of 4 cards of the same suit, excluding the cards found in the crib, and will score 4 points. And if a flush is made using the starter card, then 5 points are scored. If a flush is found in the crib, it doesn't count unless the starter card is also of the same suit, thus creating a 5-card flush. And for a flush to count, it must match the suit of the starter card, and only count during scoring, not during play itself. The highest score a player can get in a single hand is 29, which is achieved by the various pairs and combinations found in the player's hand. To achieve this, the starter card must be a 5. The player possesses 3 additional 5s. The player possesses a jack, and the starter card is the same suit as the player's jack. This plays out by the player having knobs, a 4-of-a-kind, the 5s being used to make 15, and the jack plus the 5. When play comes to an end, the hands and the crib are counted in the following order: non-dealer's hand, dealer's hand, then the crib. But in a game with 3 or more players, this process starts with the player found to the dealer's left and moves clockwise. With the non-dealer player, as they do this, they will count all combinations that they find, excluding the last card and 31. During the count, each hand in a 2-player game consists of 5 total cards, 4 in the player's hand and the starter card. And regardless of how many players are involved in a game, the starter card will always be used to score every hand, including the crib. During the count, a non-dealer player is able to count out and win the game before the dealer can count their own hand, even if the dealer has a total that is greater than the non-dealer. And the same card can be used multiple times during counting, as long as either a new card is added to the count, or the same cards are used in different combinations. With the advancement of their pegs, players do so along the board, initially from their given starting position, which is found at one end of the board. After moving the first peg during scoring, the player will use their second peg to score when it comes to scoring a second time, which is done an appropriate number of holes ahead of the first peg without moving the first peg. The placement of the second peg represents the new total. With each subsequent score, the back peg is to be moved an appropriate number of holes beyond the front peg. All this means is that the front peg indicates the player's current total score, while the back peg indicates the player's previous score, with the distance found between them representing the amount of points the player obtained from the previous score. This is also done for ease of visually verifying the game's progress and to minimize any possible math mistakes. This process will continue until one player reaches the target number. If, during the scoring process, a player pegs short of what they're entitled to, they can't correct their mistake once they play their next card. But if they peg more than what they're entitled to, then the error will have to be corrected when it's demanded that it be done, which can occur any time before play resumes. With all of that said, there's an optional rule that is known as muggins, which occurs at the end of the game, where players are counting their hand and crib aloud. During this process, if a player fails to count any of their points, their opponent can call out muggins, which allows them to claim those missing points for themselves. Some people also apply this rule if a player fails to claim a combination score during play instead of just during the game's end phase. The implementation of this rule has led some to call this version of the game cutthroat cribbage. And when implementing this rule, some do so where the opponent doesn't have to say anything. Just wait for the other player to finish pegging, then silently pegging the remaining points for themselves. During play, if the winner scores more than a quarter of the agreed-upon number of points, it is known as skunking and is worth 2 game wins, while winning by scoring more than half of the agreed-upon number of points, it is known as double skunk and is worth 4 game wins. And being double skunked is also known as being lurched. So if playing to 121 points, skunking occurs when the winner scores more than 30 points over their opponent, while double skunking occurs when the winner scores more than 60 points over their opponent. So with that said, that is what you need to know about gameplay for Cribbage. With that taken care of, we can start talking about variants to Cribbage. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode and happy gaming.